that we have in all the beasts of Daniel chapter 7, you will find that there are 7 heads there as well. Because the first beast obviously has 1 head over there, which represents Babylon, the lion. Medo-Persia has 1 head. Greece is represented having 4 heads, and then 1 head of the final beast in Daniel chapter 7 adds up to 7 heads. That means over time, all the time periods are covered and have been incorporated into this one structure. This Catholicism structure has aspects of all the philosophies of all the kingdoms of the ages embodied in it. It has perfected paganism. So here is a woman that is a prostitute. In other words, she is unfaithful to God. A woman, in a biblical sense, is a church. Christ is also the husband. He's coming to fetch his bride, the church. So this great apostate woman sits on many waters, and we saw that the waters are multitudes, nations, peoples, tongues. And with this woman, the kings of the earth have committed fornication. That means they've had relationships with her, which were, of course, contrary to the relations that God would like them to have. We look at the kings of the world that have created havoc upon this planet, dealings with the papacy. We see the Gorbachevs with the papacy. We see the so-called dictators with the papacy, actually part and parcel of it. Why do they always wear black when they visit the Pope? Because they have to reflect the 2 sides of the Masonic story, the knowledge of good and evil. The Queen of the Bilderbergers, Prince Philip, Prince Charles in his black with a white Pope. And here we have the equivalents in the Islamic world. There is Margaret Thatcher, there is Carter, the Japanese, the Bushes, and the Blairs. Do the kings of the world work with this system, yes or no? Is there any system on this planet that qualifies like this system? The woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet, 2 colors which applied definitely to the Roman Church. They used the colors purple and they used the colors red for cardinals and for bishops. Crimson and purple are the colors. Isn't it fascinating? And decked with gold and precious stones and pearls, there's no doubt that this is the richest church institution in the entire world. The treasures that are in the Vatican Museum boggle the mind. It is unbelievable. If you take the papal crown, the papal triple crown that comes from Medo-Persia, if you had that crown alone, you could probably get all the debt out of the United States of America if you sold it.
The Catholic Church is the biggest financial power, wealth accumulator, and property owner in existence, possessing more material wealth than any bank, corporation, giant trust, or government anywhere on the globe. The Pope, who is the visible ruler of this colossal global wealth, is one of the richest men on earth. While 2/3 of the world earns less than $2 a day, and 1/5 of the world is underfed or starving to death, the Vatican hoards the world's wealth, profits from it on the stock market, and at the same time preaches about giving.
Having a golden cup in her hand, full of abominations and filthiness of her fornication. So this golden cup is full of false doctrines. There's only one church in the whole world that uses a woman with a cup, and that is the Roman Church. And here is Città del Vaticano using the woman with the golden cup, and she is called Fides on all their documents. Fides. Now what does that mean? Fides. Well, let's go to a Masonic source, a very good Masonic source, written by Albert G. Mackey, the Manual of the Lodge. Albert Mackey was a 33-degree Freemason. It'll become clear as we go through the lectures what this means. And he says, the right hand has in all ages been deemed an emblem of fidelity, and our ancient brethren worship deity under the name of Fides. or fidelity, which was sometimes represented by two right hands joined, and sometimes by two human figures holding each other by the right hand. Numa was the first who erected the altar to Fides, under which the name, the goddess of oaths and honesty, was worshipped. So it means honesty and fidelity, but it is also an image of a female deity.
And upon her forehead was a name written, Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth.
And upon her forehead was a name written, Mystery. That means it is a concealed science, if you like. Babylon the Great, the ancient Babylonian religion, through Kabbalism and Gnosticism, removed Jesus Christ as the deity that saves and replaces it with another power. We've seen the Islamic secret societies, and we've seen what the Quran teaches, that Jesus was not the Son of God, that he never died, that his blood was not shed for us, that he was whisked away, that he's spiritualized, he never came in the flesh. All of these issues, we see this is the very central doctrine of Rome today, and is the theology of the Vulgate. The Templars, the Rosicrucians, the Jesuits, Freemasonry, all of them hold to the central doctrine. Two doctrines in the world. Not 100, two doctrines in the world. All wearing different cloaks, all controlled by one power. Unbelievable? And then this interesting statement, the vestments of the priests of Horus were covered with these crosses, and then you have the Maltese cross. And I showed you that the papacy has this on its vestments, and the bishops wear it as well. These are priests of Horus. That's a mystery. You have to look behind the scenes to find it. The mitre that they wear on their head, that today looks just like that, represents actually the fish head of the god Dagon, which means Dag-on is the fish god. So the fish head, later the cape was removed, the fish cape, it was replaced with a red cloak or a purple cloak or whatever color, but the mitre with the open fish head on top remained.
Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth.
Now, Revelation 17 verse 5 calls this institution the mother of prostitutes. In Revelation 18 verse 7, she says, I sit as queen, I am not a widow, and I will never mourn. I am, and there is none beside me, I will never be a widow or suffer loss of children. She's going to control the world in a spiritual sense. That's what this power says. Now, it's interesting that the Vatican has just recently, September 5, 2000, issued this encyclical, Dominus Iesus, where she says, other churches are no sisters of ours, the Vatican insists. It must always be clear that the one holy Catholic and Apostolic Universal Church is not the sister, but the mother of all the churches. Cardinal Ratzinger said that. He's the head of the Inquisition. They don't call themselves the Inquisition anymore. They call themselves the Congregation for Doctrine and Faith. But it's the same thing. It's even in the same building. She is not the sister, but the mother of all the churches.
The mother of harlots and abominations of the earth.
The old Babylonian religion gave rise to Kabbalism. Via the Essenes and others, Gnosticism came into existence, and Gnosticism was eventually, over time, through many intermediary organizations, carried over to the Knights Templars. And the Knights Templars were a group of a Roman Catholic order, if you like, that were set over the temple site to protect it. And they had strong links to Islamic societies, the Ismailis, the Karmatites, the Fatimites, the Druzes, and the Assassins. Now the Templars, they had their secret inner information inculcated in the Rosicrucians and the Jesuits. The Jesuits, again, formed and created Freemasonry and the Illuminati, which, according to Gary Carr, controls Marxism, American, European secret societies and political societies, international banking, and the World Council of Churches. And of course you have the entire New Age movement, the Theosophical societies, the many cults, and Freemasonry was created as the Protestant arm of the Roman Catholic Church. Unbeknown to them, beguiled, fooled, if you like, into doing the work that Rome wanted them to do, so that Rome could sit in the background while Freemasonry did it for them.
We're going to get deep inside the Illuminati, the family, the order. We have a guest that was involved with this group, born into it for over 30 years, and her name is Svali. Svali, are you with us?
Yes, I am.
So you reach the age of 12, and then you're told by your parents you're going to an induction ceremony in the Vatican. Can you tell us how that happened and what occurred at that ceremony when you went there?
Okay, this isn't easy to talk about, as you know. When I was 12, I was flown over to Germany, and I was at, I'll call them the German Father's house over there, and there was some preparation for a few days beforehand, and I was told that there would be a very important ceremony, and it was considered a sealing ceremony at that point. And basically I was told a little bit about what I was expected to do during the ceremony. You know, when we got there, we went to the Vatican. There's underneath the Vatican, there's a large room that I described to you when we talked before. It has 13 catacomb chambers leading into it with and what they do is they, as you go down these steps into the room, you can see that it's almost circular, and so they're all around it, and they bring out the mummies from the catacombs, and they set them beside each one, and they say that the spirits of the fathers watching over the ceremony. And during the ceremony, there was a large table in the center of the room. It was on top of a huge golden pentagram, and they had a ceremony there. You know, they.
Okay, now how many other children were with you being inducted into the family or the order, as they call it?
There were 2 other children at that point, and there were several adults too.
Okay.
See, the church also brings in adults to swear their allegiance too. Just so you know, I was told, and I don't know if this is true, if you want to rise to a certain position within the Catholic Church hierarchy, you do have to go through that ceremony as well.
Okay, so you're down in this room with your parents weren't present.
No. The German father and the French father were. Yeah.
Okay, and at that point, tell our listeners what you witnessed.
Well, there was a table. It looked like dark glass in the center of the room. I mean, it was made of stone, but it was very shiny and dark and black. And it may have been something like obsidian or onyx. I'm not sure. You know, I'd have to. That's the only time I've seen stone like that. And it had like around the corners, they had like these gold, I guess, channels that you know, collect fluids. And little boy was placed in the center of the table and drugged. I think he was drugged because he was very quiet. He didn't move or say anything during the ceremony.
This was a little 3 or 4-year-old boy.
Yes.
Correct?
Yeah.
And then they continued to go ahead. They continued to do a child sacrifice.
Yes,
right
they
in front
did.
of you.
Yes. Yeah, I told you about that before. Yeah.
Now, afterwards, quite what a unbelievable experience for a for a 12-year-old. And do you remember the words they were saying as this was going on?
The man was in scarlet. He was speaking in Latin, and basically he was saying, you know, please accept the sacrifice, you know, on this day. But then, you know, and then he said the sacrifice will seal the ceremony, and then he did it. Afterwards, the man in scarlet, he had a huge golden ring on his hand, and he came over to the center of the room, and he had each of the people that were swearing that day. I had to go forward and kneel before him and kiss his ring and swear my allegiance to the new order, to the new world order, until my death. I can't explain the amount of darkness in a room like that, just a pure evil.
One, so take the exorcism first. The rite that the Catholic Church uses for exorcism, they have changed a few words. Just, I think, about 6 words. Is the witchcraft rite of exorcism. Okay? Next, on the apparitions, it's the same thing as the Spiritualist Church of America or any of the witchcraft organizations. It's called auras. But the saints or apparitions, I want to get into this thing real quick. The Catholic Church's altar, except for the Atame or the Knight, is the exact altar of witchcraft. And according to the reports I can get on the Nicene Council, most of the ministers at the Nicene Council that set that heresy up were from the Temple of Diana, which is witchcraft. So, everything, the bell, the incense, the whole ritual, their holy water is salt water mixture. This comes from witchcraft, which they do exorcism with. Everything that they do comes out of witchcraft, and they can't get around it.
And essentially, the next thing that happened, before I could get onto the priesthood of Satanism, excuse me, I had to get 7 people to sell our souls to the devil. The other thing I had to do, and this might astonish some of you, is I had to become a Catholic priest. I had to go back to my original vocation, because you cannot be a satanic priest unless, first of all, you're a Catholic priest. And if that surprises you, I just suggest that you go and you read some of the medieval literature. You'll see that that is in fact the case.
And I saw the woman drunken with the blood of the saints and with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. And when I saw her, I wondered with great admiration.
As the fires of persecution were kindled, Christians were stripped of their possessions and driven from their homes. Great numbers sealed their testimony with their blood. Noble and slave, rich and poor, it didn't matter, learned and ignorant were alike slain without mercy. And unless what is coming is stopped, this will repeat itself. These persecutions, beginning under Nero, the Emperor of Rome, AD 55 to 68, about the time of the martyrdom of Paul, continued with greater or less fury for centuries. Christians were falsely accused of the most dreadful crimes and declared to be the cause of all the calamities, famine, pestilence, and earthquake. They were condemned as rebels against the empire, as enemies of religion, and pests to society. Great numbers were thrown to wild beasts or burned alive in the amphitheaters. Some were crucified. Others were covered with the skins of wild animals and thrust into the arena to be torn by dogs. And vast multitudes assembled to enjoy these sights and greeted their dying agonies with laughter and applause. For in that day it was known as the great Roman circus, the football, the Super Bowl of that era. And the old Roman Empire flourished under the guise of the Vatican, the papacy, the Catholic Church. In the 13th century was established that most terrible of all the engines of the papacy, the Inquisition. The Prince of Darkness worked through the leaders of the papal hierarchy. In their secret councils, Satan and his angels controlled the minds of evil men who invented tortures too horrible to appear to human eyes. Babylon the Great was drunken with the blood of the saints. The mangled forms of millions of martyrs cried to God for vengeance upon that apostate power. This is word to word from history, folks. Popery became the world's despot. Kings and emperors bowed to the decrees of the Roman pontiff. The destinies of men, both for time and for eternity, seemed under his control. For hundreds of years, the doctrines of Rome had been extensively and implicitly received, its rites reverently performed, and its festivals observed. Its clergy were honored and liberally sustained, but the noon of the papacy was the midnight of the world. That was written by J.A. Wiley in the History of Protestantism. You see, I'm not attacking anyone, and I'm not putting anyone on a pedestal. I'm not tearing down the Vatican in order to build up the Protestant Church, for they are equally guilty. Protestantism has fractured the teachings of Christ into thousands of sects and cults and little groups, all of them professing to know the truth. None of them really do. And now you are seeing the beginning of the combination of all religions into one world religion. And while the world and the New Age movement may be waiting for the emergence of Maitreya, I tell you now here, and remember, that I have been the most accurate in making predictions about future world events based upon study and knowledge, not psychic ability, not any gift given to me from God, although I am a messenger, I can assure you of that. I tell you that in the New World Order, the one world, charismatic, and religious leader will be seated upon the throne of Rome. Mark my words.
And the angel said unto me, Wherefore didst thou marvel? I will tell thee the mystery of the woman, and of the beast that carrieth her, which hath the 7 heads and 10 horns. The beast that thou sawest was, and is not, and shall ascend out of the bottomless pit, and go into perdition. And they that dwell on the earth shall wonder, whose names were not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, when they behold the beast that was, and is not, and yet is.
The Bible says that this power was. Now, the power in Rome, the Roman Church, began in 538 AD and continued until Napoleon sent in General Berthier in 1798. So from 538 to 1798, it was a world power, and is not from 1798 until the signing of the Lateran Treaty in 1929. The Roman Church state was non-existent. Yet it is. From 1929 to present, the Roman Catholic Church has been a church and state power.
And here is the mind which hath wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains, on which the woman sitteth.
Now the Bible says that these heads represent mountains on which the woman sitteth. Looking into Strong's Concordance, mountain can also translate out into hill. Is there a church and state sitting on 7 hills somewhere in this world? In the Catholic Encyclopedia, page 529, quote, "It is within the city of Rome, called the City on 7 Hills, that the entire area of Vatican State proper is now confined," unquote.
And there are 7 kings, 5 are fallen, and 1 is, and the other is not yet come. And when he cometh, he must continue a short space. And the beast that was and is not, even he is the 8th, and is of the 7, and goeth into perdition.
So we know that the papal power, the Vatican, was from 538 to 1798, that it was wounded in 1798, and then the wound was healed in 1929 by the Lateran Treaty, in which the Italian state recognized the sovereignty of the Catholic Church and regarded the Church as an independent member of the international community. Also, the Pope pledged to perpetual neutrality in international relations and abstention from mediation in any controversy except when specific